we always had was we always had pressure from foreign influences, foreign interference from different countries. Back in the beginning of this country, it was Great Britain and France. It's just migrated to countries like China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, and these are all countries that have had some play in our election processes for the last, probably for the last decade. We've migrated from people going in and voting by raising their hands to paper ballots. Now we're into the 21st century and we have these machines.
Right.
And these machines, what we do know, one of the things that we do know for certain, is that the machines are connected to the internet. Our FBI and CISA, the cyber arm of the Department of Homeland Security, they gave out these alerts and they said, hey, Iran is interfering in our election process. The machines are not supposed to be connected to the internet.
Right.
They're supposed to be free of the internet. Well, if it's connected to the internet, that means that anybody in any country, and I can name some of the countries. So we know China, we know Iran, we know Spain had something to do with it, we know Serbia, we've had Italy come up, we've had Germany come up.
Right.
You can't have a million people sitting at computers controlling this.
Right.
So you have to have some algorithm, some set of steps that computers can run automatically to control it. Mm-hmm. That's what I figured out.
It's impossible to have this same glitch
every time.
In every single county. And so far, it's been every single county you've done in the United States.
So far.
The same thing, the same machines, the same attacks, the same people, the same corruption that went on, the same crime against humanity was all across all the states.
So for me to get 1.000 and I'm a physicist, that ain't natural, buddy.
Right. So it couldn't be done by humans.
No, this
It's
is not by
100% impossible.
No.
Had to be machines.
Yes.
And they had to be online.
Constantly online.
Constantly online, everybody. No way could you ever do that humanly to make all of them exactly increase the same percentage.
When I've shown this to other people, they've said, well, gee, how could people do that? And I say,
you couldn't. It has to be machines.
Has to be.
And it rhymes with Dominion. And it rhymes with Smartmatic and ES&S. All these machines that were used out there cannot be done by humans.
Cannot be done.
And you have to have access before, during, and after.
This is too extensive. It could not be done by humans. It has to be done by computers. A room full of computers somewhere that's connected to the internet, preparing, monitoring, controlling, cleaning up the mess afterwards. And you have to have each step, and it could not be humans.
So it was a well thought out plan.
We had the most massive cyber warfare attack, Mike, in history on our electoral system.
This is cyber warfare. This is the Chinese doctrine of unrestricted warfare. And it goes all the way back to the writings of Sun Tzu. The acme or the pinnacle of war is to win without fighting.
I mean, we just can't not allow this type of activity to occur with machines that we know they're connected to the internet when they're not supposed to be. We have IP addresses, internet protocol addresses that are electronic highways going back into these countries, and we can see the activity. We can actually see the electronic activity. And believe me, folks, if you're paying attention and you watch some of the data that Mike Lindell is talking about putting out there, take a look at it. I mean, this is not made up stuff. This is real stuff, and it proves that we had foreign interference in our election.
WVW Broadcast Network is pleased to present the Mike Lindell documovie, Absolute Interference. Scientific and national intelligence proof that enemies, foreign and domestic, used computers to hack the 2020 election. The Mike Lindell documovie, Absolute Proof, was seen by 70 million in the first 4 days and 150 million in the first 4 weeks. Mike Lindell has absolute proof that the largest cybercrime in world history occurred through absolute interference. And now, here is your host, Mike Lindell.
Hello, everyone. The last time I was in this studio, we were filming Absolute Proof. I want to give you an update on that. It has now been seen by over 150 million people around the world. And when that launched, I want to bring you up to date on that. When we all the way up to February 5th, all the way up to the 4th, I give everyone, all the media, my phone number, my direct phone number, not using any PR firm. I like to talk to them direct. And these are all your media, from CNNs to your Foxes to the New York Times, the Washington Post, all of them, USA Today, ABC, NBC, CBS, they all have my direct number. Well, up until the 4th, every single day, from morning till night, they called up. Hey, Mike, you lost your Twitter. You lost your MyPillow's Twitter. They're boycotting you. Your retailers are leaving. All these things, and I kept telling them, you know what? And the reason they're doing that is because I have proof, 100% proof that our country was attacked by China, by communism coming in, this foreign interference to our elections through the machines, Dominion, Smartmatic, ES&S, all of them. So every day they're mocking me in the news, they're mocking me on late night TV. Jimmy Kimball, he was great at, making fun of the evidence, it's conspiracy. Mike Lindell's nuts, all these things. Well, I kept telling them on February 5th, we're going to launch. We're going to show you all the evidence in this documentary called Absolute Proof. I told all the media that. Well, here's what came. On February 5th, when I left this studio that morning, and this launched at 9 a.m. on February 5th, here's what happened. First of all, crickets. No media called me. They didn't call. They didn't write. Nothing. But here's what did happen. It opened up. Vimeo took it down. YouTube took it down. This is within the first couple hours. 50,000 people a minute were watching in to come in and see this evidence. 50,000 people a minute. Then it goes up on Facebook, and what does Facebook do? They put a sign over it that says contains nudity and profanity. They did this big attack on this evidence, and none of them out there said, oh, this isn't true or this isn't true. They just completely didn't show it. They didn't talk about it. But we all seen it. Every one of you out there seen it. What we're doing tonight, we have another 2-hour documentary here, and this is going to show so far what we've validated what you've seen before, the cyber attack, the IP addresses, the IDs of the computers. But tonight, I, for the first time, am going to see stuff that I've heard is the most amazing evidence to add on to what we already have, the 100% proof times 2. It's going to be a great 2 hours, and I can't wait to get started. Hello, everyone. Well, now we have General Mike Flynn, a hero in our country, and another divine appointment where I actually met him in January for the first time. And, as you all know, I got my evidence. I got the first piece of evidence, that new evidence on January 9th, where I went all in against these machines and this foreign takeover and everything. We had an absolute proof. And now here in this one, I wanted the general to come in because he knows a lot more, and it started a lot earlier for you. Yeah. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, Mike, thanks for having me. And Absolute Truth was an unbelievable show that came up and at the right time. And what I would just offer on foreign interference in U.S. elections goes all the way back to the founding of this country. And without belaboring all the history of it, one of the things that we learned right after the 3 November election, we had this individual who was participated in the Venezuela election, and this is where the Dominion machines first popped up.
That was with Smartmatic,
with
right?
Smartmatic
Kind of
the
birth of the
that's
machines,
right,
everybody.
Right. So, and we'll talk about the different machines that are used. Dominion, HART is another one, ES&S is another one, but these machines that we have applied to our election system in our country. So what we have is we had this individual, and we knew all of this before we met, and before we started to talk about all this. We're following not just the foreign side of it, but how are they working with people inside of our own system too, inside of the election process in the various counties.
So over the cheating over the decades and centuries that's gone in our election, it's just graduated now to where it's high tech.
To it's high tech. So what we always had pressure from foreign influences, foreign interference from different countries. Back in the beginning of this country, it was Great Britain and France. It's just migrated to countries like China, Russia, Iran, Venezuela, North Korea, and these are all countries that have had some play in our election processes for the last decade. We've migrated from people going in and voting by raising their hands to paper ballots. Now we're into the 21st century and we have these machines.
Right. This inspired Braun and the organizers of this year's DEF CON hacking conference to collect over 30 pieces of voting-related equipment, including voting machines and a mock elections office, and tell a group of hackers to try any means necessary to break into and reverse engineer them. And it didn't take long. Several were compromised within the first hour and a half.
So if you're a voter in America, we're likely hacking a machine that you vote on. There's a few dozen of these machines and also electronic poll books. In some states, people check in on an electronic device as opposed to a paper book.
Do you think that nation states, real criminals, already have an idea of some of the vulnerabilities that are being discovered today?
Absolutely. It's all documented. It's in public documents.
Right.
It's not hiding anywhere. You can go actually to Secretary of State websites and download and learn hundreds and hundreds of vulnerabilities.
By the end of the weekend, all of the available machines had been hacked successfully. Do you believe that right now we are in a position where the 2020 election will be hacked?
Oh, without question. I mean, the 2020 election will be hacked no matter what we do, even if we're as more successful than I even think we could be in securing our elections.
And these machines, what we do know, one of the things that we do know for certain, is that the machines are connected to the internet. And most people in this country, when you go in to vote, in fact, I believe from everything that we discovered, none of those machines are supposed to be connected to the internet. None of them. You're supposed to go in, take your piece of paper, put it in there, you vote, and it's counted, and it's a legitimate, free, fair, and transparent count. And what we've learned is that because they're connected to the internet, we have all these paths, these electronic pathways or these electronic roads that lead from that machine where that individual voted, where a U.S. citizen voted, and it goes back into these IP addresses. And all an IP address is, it's like a roadway, it's an electronic highway, and it goes back into another country. Right. It goes back into, we know, because the FBI and the cyber arm of the Department of Homeland Security, CISA, which some people learned about during the post-election process, they basically gave alerts out on I think it was the 28th of October, prior to the election, and on the election day, the 3rd of November, and they alerted us that Iran was interfering in our elections. On those 2 days alone, one was a couple of days prior, and one was on the day of the election. So our FBI and CISA, the cyber arm of the Department of Homeland Security, they gave out these alerts, and they said, hey, Iran is interfering in our election process. Most people don't know that.
Because they can see the cyber attack, or they can see the attack?
They can see the actual, digital fingerprint or digital footprint, if you will.
That's cyber. That's that spyware we've talked about in Absolute Proof.
Exactly.
And one of the things too, and then we found out in Absolute Proof, like 60% of the attacks came from China, the IP addresses.
So when you start to talk about the foreign interference, now what you have to understand is who are these groups of countries that are working together to interfere in our elections? They do not do it one-off. Like Iran's not on its own doing it, Russia's not on its own doing it, Venezuela's not on its own, and neither is China. The big sort of gorilla in the room is China.
Many have concerns about voting systems with remote access software, and I think we want to make sure that companies no longer sell voting machines that have network capabilities. We need also to understand supply chains. In December 2019, a study released by Interos, a supply chain monitoring company, showed that 1/5 or 20% of the components in a popular voting machine came from China-based companies. Furthermore, close to 2/3, or actually 59%, of suppliers within that machine's supply chain had locations in either China or Russia.
China is clearly, everything that we've learned about the ownership of some of these machines, some of these companies, to how they're actually operating inside of this country, and then all of the things that we've learned about cyber warfare and information warfare over the last couple of decades, particularly as it relates to China, the theft of various databases, and everything that we represent in our digital life, pretty much the Chinese have stolen that information. So now you take it to the elections. Right. You take it to the elections and you look at the machinery that we are using in our election process, which, I don't know how we're going to go forward as a nation and continue to use these machines, knowing that what we just went through was really a false election. It was a false election. And I know that some of the states that we looked at, some of the contracts that we looked at, the machines are not supposed to be connected to the internet. Right. They're supposed to be free of the internet. Well, if it's connected to the internet, that means that anybody in any country, and I can name some of the countries. So we know China, we know Iran, we know Spain had something to do with it, we know Serbia, we've had Italy come up, we've had Germany come up. So these are just, and of course Russia.
Many of the states of these United States still use outdated, easy to hack voting machines.
In every single case where a U.S. voting machine has been analyzed by competent security researchers, they have found vulnerabilities that would let someone inject malicious software and change election data. Every single case.
That's Professor J. Alex Halderman from the University of Michigan. He's one of the world's leading specialists in voting systems. He's helped Congress draft legislation on how to beef up election security. But if the machines aren't actually online when you vote, there's no way to hack them, right?
This is something that you hear all the time in the U.S. from election officials. Unfortunately, it's not actually true. Those election management system workstations sometimes are connected to the internet, or the data that's programmed into them passes through an internet-connected system. So we're just 1 or 2 hops away from an online attacker.
I think we need to worry very much in 2020 about not only Russia, but Iran, China, North Korea, and other countries that have sophisticated cybersecurity offensive capabilities.
Most people won't see it in the regular media in this country, but New Hampshire as an example.
Yeah.
So New Hampshire, one of the things that they learned up in New Hampshire is that in one particular district, I guess, or certainly one of the counties up there, all of the machines started the day with 300 votes already in the algorithm or already in the machine counted for Joe Biden. 300 votes already before anybody even turned the thing on. So when they turned them on, 300 votes. We know that in New Hampshire right now. That's being investigated, and I appreciate the people of New Hampshire doing that. In I think it's District 20 or 22, Claudia Tenney out of New York. Well, she didn't concede her race, and I think that they did 3 canvassings. She continued to win each canvassing, and lo and behold, in her election runoff, in her election race where she won, and now she's a congresswoman from New York, her problem there was also the machines, and the machines not operating properly and to disadvantage her, and now the defense against her, the people that are attacking her are saying, well, it's, the machines are the ones that gave you the race. So you can't have your cake and eat it too. We know from other information that we have that in other states, and this information is going to come out, in other states with these algorithms, and even the word algorithm, is too many syllables for most people to understand, but essentially what it is, it's a way to manipulate the data in one of these computers, one of these phones, or one of these machines that they use. Basically, you can set the machines for a certain amount of votes already, so when they come in at 6 o'clock in the morning or 7 o'clock in the morning on the 3rd of November and they turn the machine on, it automatically has a number that is for the guy that they want to win. And in this case, we know of one particular state where we're looking at it, and we think that the machines were all set at 35,000.
It is,
Mike.
yes, yeah.
35,000.
We won't name no states, but Arizona.
Yeah, but it's going to come out. I mean,
it's going to come out. And this is all, and that's just another way to cheat with these machines.
Right.
There's actually 4 ways, maybe even more we don't know about, but these are all the online ways. And we were talking earlier. If you watch the movie, someone said, Mike, you got to watch the movie Kill Chain.
Right.
So I watched this movie. And I'm going, what? It was like a year ago it came out on HBO, and my own senator, Amy Klobuchar, Democrat, she's in the movie saying we should never have these machines.
We're very concerned because there's only 3 companies. You could easily hack into them. It makes it seem like all these states are doing different things, but in fact, 3 companies are controlling this.
We don't know anything about how they organize themselves and how their software works because it's all proprietary.
The degree to which the voting machine companies will say, we got this, that's almost always a warning sign for anybody in the cybersecurity business because unless they are really truly skilled and have been doing cybersecurity as their main business for a long time, they usually don't got this.
Unlike Microsoft, who's actually very transparent about their security issues, and they have hackers routinely come in and hack them, and then they make their vulnerabilities public information in most cases. The voting machine vendors are the opposite of that.
What I have found, especially in the voting system arena, is that security is not really taken very seriously. We posted a testing plan with the California Secretary of State's office saying we were going to do X, Y, and Z, and they approved that plan. And so we started that plan of testing, and what we found is just, it's staggering. There were multiple vulnerabilities that could allow an attacker to get the highest level of privilege or the highest level of rights, and then gain remote access into the system and do what you want to do, whether it's change an election or shut the system down. And then when ES&S discovered that we were not using their testing plan, they were appalled. When we used our own testing plan and found these vulnerabilities, they pretty much told us that they had their own team and that they were not interested. The fact that we have vendors that say you cannot look at our code is the first problem. In 2014, we evaluated Dominion's Democracy Suite. We'd found a number of vulnerabilities. The same thing that with ES&S, we found multiple operating system patches missing. And essentially what that means is an attacker can inject code into that system, execute that with the possibility of receiving some sort of control. If I can get on that system, if I can get access to the database, and if I can change the elections, change an election for a city, for a county, for a state, however. How can a vendor sell a voting system with this many vulnerabilities? And I can't find a straight answer.
Amy Klobuchar's in there. Senator Blumenthal, I think, is the other senator in there. And if you watch Kill Chain, which is before, this happened over a year ago, before the 3 November election, these Democratic senators are talking about the machines and how corrupt they are, and that we shouldn't count on these machines to actually function properly during our federal elections.
Voting is our capability to have a peaceful transfer of power. If you don't have that, the alternatives are revolutions.
We call them voting machines, but they're nothing more than obsolete computers.
2002 is when they put them in service.
A commonly used argument, they are never connected to internet.
No voting machines are connected to the internet.
Not connected to the internet. Not connected to the internet, and therefore cannot be attacked.
Oh, it wants to go to internet. That's very nice.
In 2016, we know that Russian actors targeted state election systems.
When people say no votes were changed, it misses the point.
Imagine you go in and flip the digits of everybody's address.
When you prevent people from casting a ballot, you've hacked an election.
We may be buying the world's best 20th century military when the battlefront is election security.
I had full access. I could have changed any vote.
It's called a kill chain. Weaponization, paralyzation, when the governments cannot take action, that's when you finish the target.
How confident are you that the 2018 midterm elections are going to be legitimate?
I'm very concerned that you could have a hack that finally went through. You have 21 states that were hacked into. They didn't find out about it for a year, and that's one of the reasons that we want to pass our bill, so that there's now a requirement that they tell the individual Secretary of States immediately so they can protect themselves.
So they were concerned, and they were saying it because, and the reason why Kill Chain was even done was because of all of the noise about Russian interference in the 2016 election. So as they looked at this, and they looked at foreign interference, which is rampant. Foreign interference has happened in our country for decades, as I mentioned, and it's been going on forever. We are now just in a much more sophisticated means by which they can interfere, and that's with these machines. And so
that's
we
what
can't
they were,
count it.
right.
That's what
That's
they were
what they
arguing
were
about.
concerned about.
Yeah.
So here we have Democrats concerned a year ago. They were concerned that it would happen to them.
Right.
You know,
In the 2020 election.
And here's what I want to say. Right now, it doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or a Republican. These machines and this attack by China and other countries on our country, this is everybody's concern. If this doesn't get changed now, it's over.
We are at a transition point in this country where we're sitting here after this 3rd of November election. Here we are, in March of 2021, and we're facing this sort of divergence for our nation. Either we're going to continue down the path of being a constitutional republic, or we're going to continue down toward this path of being a Marxist socialist country. And I think that what we have to do, Mike, is we have to really resolve this 3rd of November.
It needs to, right. And what we're going to do, just so everybody knows, and the next 6 weeks, we're pushing out, just like this documentary you're watching right now. We're going to dump this out. The new social media platform I have up to fight. Right now, our constitutional rights are just getting, our civil right. Number one, the First Amendment, the right to free speech. Right. That's the first thing they've done, is taken that away from all of us. Nobody's hearing about it. But we're going to do an evidence dump. Just dump it all out there. I believe this is going to get, when it gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to look at it this time, because they'll probably watched all this stuff over and over again, and I'm giving them every reason they can't say no.
I mean, we're kidding ourselves on these machines in our election process. And for anybody in this country that stands there and tells you, oh, this is all a conspiracy theory, how many times have we heard the United States government say we've been cyber hacked by the Chinese or by the North Koreans or by Russia? I mean, we have big, the big U.S. intelligence community with their intelligence community assessments, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, the House Select Committee on Intelligence, the reports that they've come out year in and year out about hacking and about foreign interference in our elections. We have reports in 2017, 2018, 2019, and the summer of 2020 that led us to what we know to be true, which is we know foreign interference is going to occur in our elections. And so knowing all that, kill chain, as you mentioned, you had the Democrats come out and they were all worried about the machines in the year leading up to the 2020 election. And now all of a sudden, when we find out that the machines actually corrupted our election outcome in a massive way, everybody goes, oh, wait a second, there's nothing to see here.
Because
we never get cyber attacked.
Right.
That's right.
But you know what? Here's what I say. I want to say it again. The miracle, I think it's a miracle where we're at right now. When we say we almost missed this, you have the first miracle that they outbroke the algorithms tonight, because if it hadn't broke the machine algorithms and Donald Trump getting more votes than they ever expected, we would have all went to bed at 3 a.m. Every state would have turned in their number. We just said, better luck next time.
Right.
So instead, we opened, we got to this point with all these machines. November 3rd passed, December 14th passed, January 6th passed, January 20th passed, March 4th passed. But you know what? I look at it as a good thing. You know why? Every single person in this country, my friends that are Democrats, they're going, what is this? This is socialism that came in, and communism. This isn't what they voted for as being a Democrat, a traditional Democrat. And I believe, and I believe this, we've talked, I believe when this manifests out, it's going to be the greatest uniting of this country. I don't care what party, I don't care what people, and we're going to get back to a time. Another thing that's come out of this is all the corruption has bubbled to the surface. Whether you're a Republican, the crooked Republicans like in Brian Kemp and those people, Brad Ratsiford, all these guys that bubbled up, senators and Republicans and Democrats, all these people. And now, this is what I've seen. I was never into politics. I didn't know anything about politics. And all of a sudden, now that I've been submersed in it for 4 years and meeting all these people, what I found out is most of the politicians either have a political agenda or a personal agenda or a party agenda. I mean, it's all...
Or they're compromised.
Or they're compromised. That was my next thing. Or they're or blackmailed somehow. So you have that. And there are very few people that I found, one being Donald Trump, that where he actually was for the people. You're making decisions and ignoring all this noise and saying, here's a problem, here's a solution. But what will it manifest to help the people? We're supposed to be a government for the people. And that's what we know. We talked about it. You start picking politicians going forward, they better have an agenda to help the people.
Yeah, I mean, they have to be, our country, it was built on individual liberties. The Constitution is about individual freedoms and choices. I mean, that's what it's about. It's not about collectivism. It's not about state control. So we kid ourselves in this country, and I think that this whole kill chain, and we've talked about that a few times in this show, because people need to go and watch it to understand why we are making this argument now, because this has been going on for a while. The Democrats, and you're looking at a guy who stood with Donald Trump going into the campaign in 2016 as a Democrat. I grew up as a lifelong Democrat, and I've subsequently changed because it's never been about, as Mike talks about getting into politics, it's never been about politics. It's been about the country and serving this country the best that we can. And what I would say is that we are doing our country a disservice if we don't get this thing corrected and we don't take a hard look at what happened on the 3rd of November. If we don't do that, folks, we are not going to have the country that we believe we should have, which is a constitutional republic built on individual liberties. We're going to end up with a Marxist socialist country, and all of us are going to wake up one of these days and we're going to be living in a police state.
Absolutely. And it's, you know, in Venezuela, when we went back, when it started in Venezuela, didn't they flip that country in 2 years, right?
Right. So
Complete takeover.
What I learned almost right after the election, when we started to really go, okay, wait a second, what happened? And we started to talk about how the machines really were impacting, as well as some of the other aspects of what was done really from the 4th through the 7th of November. This issue of Venezuela came up, and we had the opportunity to get some feedback from one of the individuals who was in Venezuela at the time, who was working with the Chavez government, and it actually caused, they were able to take these machines that they had in Venezuela at the time to basically ensure that Chavez won the election, and then subsequently down the road Maduro. So it was almost like the machinery was being tested, if you will,
Absolutely.
in another country to kind of get a sense of, can you actually do this? And it worked for them. One of the things, and I don't know if you can show it on this show, but certainly everybody needs to read Justice Clarence Thomas's dissenting opinion that he wrote, because his dissenting opinion, because of all of these cases that bubbled up to the U.S. Supreme Court, nobody looked at the evidence.
Right.
No judge, other
Zero.
than one brave judge that I'm aware of up in Michigan, that looked at the actual evidence, even up to the U.S. Supreme Court. So Justice Thomas's dissenting opinion, which is a very historic read, he essentially says we are going to lose confidence in one of the most precious institutions in our country, which is our ability to conduct an election. And so that alone should scare every American citizen, because if you have somebody that looks at it like that, because he's looking at the issues in play across the country, because he's smart enough to do that, and he's really one of the only brave ones up there at the Supreme Court level to actually look at the system in place and say, wow, we got a problem. None of them looked at the evidence, and they didn't bother to do that, and that's a shame. So now what we have to do is we've got to get all this information out there. Everything that we know, all the things that I've talked about, from what we know Venezuela did and what we learned from Venezuela, what we know Iran did. Iran was interfering in our elections a couple of days prior, and then the day of the election. We know from our own intelligence assessments, we know from our congressional inspections and investigations that they've done, we have had massive foreign interference in our elections for the last 10 years, certainly for the last 4 years, and they were all griping about it in 2016, yet nobody wants to talk about it right now.
When Brad Rassiford and the president were on the phone, I can't believe that the logic where we've all been living in the twilight zone. This call where the president says, hey, you know, and I don't know about these exact numbers, but you have 8,000 dead people that voted, 22,000 non-residents, 8,000 minors, 10,000 people double voted, or whatever it was. He's got all these silos. He goes, we only lost by 11,730. Can you give us two of the columns? And we win. And if you remember what Brad said, he goes, well, those are the wrong numbers. And the president said, well, where are the right numbers? Or he said to his person, or where do we get these numbers? He said to his person. His person said, sir, we got them from the Secretary of State's office.
Exactly.
And then
off their website.
Yeah, off their website. And then the president said, well, when are you going to give us the right numbers? And he didn't answer. And the other person said, we've been trying to get them for 2 months. When you finally get Brad Rassiford, Pressenberger, or whatever his name is, you get him up there on, if I got him in a courtroom, I'd say, well, what were the real numbers, Brad?
Right.
You know, why wouldn't you give the President of the United States the real numbers? I just want no one out there living in fear anymore, because that's what they want. They want us to all live in fear. The socialism, communism coming in, cancel culture.
Big time.
Keep the fear up. Don't live in fear. We're in the greatest, I said it before, these are the greatest times ever in history where we're part of a thing. Like you just said, those two paths we can go. Well, you know
One
what?
is to continue on to be a constitutional republic, or another is we're going to go the way of the wolves here, and we're going to be a socialist, Marxist country.
I believe we're going to be taking the right path, and it's going to be the greatest revival ever. I use Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understandings. In all ways acknowledge Him, and He will guide your paths. And we're going down the right path, and it's going to all open up, and And it's going to be the greatest uniting ever. I really believe that.
I think that at the end of this, as we go through this discovery of truth, which is really all we want, that the American public are going to realize just how great this country is again. You know, when people start to say that there's an awakening going on, there's an awakening with as Mike, you know, highlights his faith and the faith that we have in our system and in each other. What we need to have is we need to have faith in the institutions of our countries, particularly our federal government. That faith in the institutions of our country has broken down, and it's broken down primarily because of this election, and we cannot have this in this country. So in order for us to renew that faith, the faith that we have in God Almighty and the faith that we have in the United States of America as a great country, as the greatest country on the planet in the history of the world, we have to allow the truth to come out. And trust me, folks, the truth is going to come out. And I will say that, and I forget the particular date that he said it, but he gave a great statement, and that was President Donald J. Trump while he was still in office. He made a statement. He said, essentially, if it was a fair game, I'll be the first one to say I got it. You know, I worked hard to win, and I obviously didn't win, but this wasn't a fair game. It was not a fair game. And the evolution of our election system with this machinery that exists in every single state, paid for by U.S. taxpayers, and now they're telling us that we can't look inside of these things because of somebody's. It's a proprietary software. Baloney. That no way in the world. This doesn't belong to Dominion. It doesn't belong to ES&S. It doesn't belong to HART. It belongs to the American citizenry of those particular states, because guess what, folks? You're paying for it. And federal dollars pay for it in this Voting Act stuff. I think they put out, it's somewhere between $300 and $500 million spread around the states to pay for some of these election processes and systems, principally these machines.
I was the chief technical advisor to the Secretary of State of the largest state in the United States, and I was not allowed to look at the software running in Diebold or any other vendor's voting systems. To this day, I have not been allowed to look at that software.
Software like this is installed in more than 30 states. If someone tampers with it, or it just malfunctions, then the wrong people can win elections. If that happens, hundreds of representatives, judges, and other officials may hold offices they are not elected to. Democrat or Republican, it affects us all.
Suppose that we didn't have any computers at all, and when you went to vote, the voting booth was separated by a curtain, and there was a guy behind the curtain who would write down your votes. So you just dictate them, he writes them down, and when you're done, you leave without being able to look at the ballot. Most people in their right mind would not trust this process. The guy behind the curtain could be incompetent, he could hear your votes wrong and record them improperly, or it could be that he doesn't like your political affiliation and would prefer to see your votes cast for someone else. In an electronic voting machine, you don't have a little guy inside the machine taking dictation, but you have lots of people who are involved in writing the software and lots of people who could have touched the software before it went into that machine. If one of those people puts something malicious in the software and it's distributed to all the machines, then that one person could be responsible for the change of possibly tens of thousands of votes, maybe even hundreds of thousands across the country. That's a very dangerous situation.
You know, I began looking into these voting machines, and one reason I was so curious is because it's a secret how they work. The companies that make them keep it a secret. None of the computer scientists felt they could even look at the code because the code was supposed to be a secret. The certification labs that examine it keep their process a secret of what they do, and even the election officials who buy the equipment are prohibited by their contract from ever looking and seeing how it works.
Now we have with us Dr. Douglas G. Frank, and I want to tell a little bit of an introduction here. I met a gal that actually ran for Congress in Pennsylvania, and she got completely cheated out of her race. She was in the lead, the machines did their flip, and she checked in. She went precinct by precinct, actually. I got to become good friends with her, and I find out just before we were doing this documentary that she had also reached out to other people to get help, and you were one of them, actually the main one, I think, that has dug into this. And what's your background, doctor?
I have a PhD in surface electrochemistry. It's a fancy name, but it basically means I like to study surfaces.
Right.
And in my field, I usually there are lots of data coming in and you have to model it.
Right.
So give me lots of data and
Right.
have to make models. That sounds like an election to me.
Right, absolutely.
And so
absolutely.
she asked me to look at her
So
results.
you would know deviations and you would
Oh,
know
yeah.
the numbers, And,
Absolutely.
Yeah. See, I deal with a lot of that too daily in my business too, where you see these spikes or whatever, and you wonder how did it happen? Has to have a different input to get a different output, right?
That's right.
And so why don't we dig into what you did then?
Sure.
So she reached out to you and
Yes.
said, "Hey, can you help me?" Because she.
Yes, and I immediately saw some problems.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
began investigating those problems in her data. It's sort of like a physicist trying to figure out a phenomenon. And I started
Right.
studying those data. And after a while, I uncovered the algorithm that's being used to control how many registrations there are in a county and how many ballots there are in a county. And it's surprising. And I figured that out in her county, and there's a fascinating correlation with the national census.
Okay.
They're using the national census to regulate that. But
Okay.
anyway, you can get the census county by county. But I analyzed her county.
Right. I want to
Go ahead.
before we get started on
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
What you found, I want everybody to know, this could only have been done through the internet or through machines. Is that correct?
Oh, no question.
You could not have done this by hand or
No,
this. That
no.
had to be done through a machine being online or being a hack coming in. Or
Absolutely. And there
okay.
are stages to it. You have to prepare ahead of time.
Right.
You have to have access during, and you have to have access afterwards.
Did everybody hear that? All three. Access before, during, and after.
That's correct.
Wow.
And by the way, in Pennsylvania, we proved each of those.
Okay.
You could see we have forensic evidence.
Wow.
In other words, this isn't just some scientist geek having fun in his laboratory
Right.
hypothesizing something.
Right.
We
You-
actually went and
You have
knocked on
you have
doors.
absolute proof.
Yes, we do.
What do you mean? So you knocked on doors
1,600 doors we knocked on. And
to see if the people were actually existed.
And they don't.
Then they don't exist.
Right. And so then the question is,
by the way, everyone, I'm hearing this for the first time too. The first time. We've never talked about this.
No, but it's a
I
pleasure.
want everyone to know that. And the reason I want to do this is because I'm going to have the same questions you would all have out there. I just heard that this is going to be an amazing presentation.
Well,
Why don't
thank
we
you.
get right into it?
So when I use the word algorithm, a simple way to understand that is it's just like a recipe.
Right.
It's a set of steps, a set of measurements, 2 teaspoons, whatever. But it's not just numbers. It's also got some steps involved.
Right.
And so that's what I figured. I figured, how are they doing this? So the first thing you need to understand is that every county in the United States has what they call a registration database. It's got the names, it's got the when they were registered, when they were born, and it's also got their entire voter history. So you can, in this, like for example, this last column is November 3rd election. So everybody who voted in the November 3rd election has a little X here.
Right.
Okay? But you notice a lot of people didn't vote. Look, here's a person. In fact, they shouldn't
Right.
be on the rolls legally,
Right.
but there they are. Boom, they voted.
Right.
And here's one, never voted at all.
Wow.
So they're on the rolls though. So the first thing you do, think of it like a credit line. You need to fill up the registrations so you have more registrations than you need.
Right.
Then you fill in the ballots to get the outcome that you want.
Right.
And all you have to do is control one number, and you can control the whole election. You just decide.
So these are people that were registered or never registered, right?
Right now, these are all registered.
Right.
The thing about it is how do you know if they're real?
Right.
There's only one way to know. You have to go knock on the door and say, hey.
And that's what you guys did.
We did do that.
And they didn't exist.
We predicted, out of the 1,600 doors we knocked on, we predicted we would find 30% of the houses would have at least one phantom voter. Phantom voter is like you knock on the door and it says on the list that John Smith lives there.
Right.
And you have a ballot from John Smith, right? You have an X.
Right.
But no John Smith lives there.
Right.
And so
they're using people that don't exist, but they're registering them to use for their algorithms in the machine.
Exactly. Because if you think about it, after the election, what if the election's challenged? Somebody's going to count ballots.
Right.
You better have registrations and you better have ballots.
That they match up.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have to control it, don't you?
Right.
So, but the thing about it is the country's big.
Right.
You can't have a million people sitting at computers controlling this.
Right.
So you have to have some algorithm, some set of steps that computers can run automatically to control it. That's what I figured out.
Right.
How could I do that? Well, I knew who's registered and I knew who the ballots were. What had to happen in between? So it's sort of like a translation, kind of like the Wind Talkers in World War II.
Right.
They translated it into Navajo, then the Navajo would and then on the other side,
Right.
They would translate it back into English so you could get the commands.
Right.
So I needed to figure out that language in between
Mm-hmm.
to get from population or registrations to the ballot. So that's
yeah.
what I figured out. So this is Hamilton County, Ohio, and you notice across the bottom here you've got age, okay, and then this is how many people in each of those are of each age.
Right.
These are real data. By the way, you can download this right from the United States Census.
Okay.
You don't even have to do anything nefarious.
Right. So these are all registered voters.
This one is just population.
Oh, that's just the population.
Just the population.
Just the population.
Yeah, you
Okay.
have 12,000 people.
Okay, I
of
got
this
you.
age,
I
and-
got you. All
and,
right.
and you notice that you got the millennials and the baby boomers, and
Yep,
then people
yep.
are passing away.
Okay. Yep. All right.
That's just the United States Census. So as it turns out, the black curve are the number of people who are registered in Hamilton County.
Right.
It looks a lot like the population.
It's exactly the population.
So the look on your face is exactly the right response.
Right. Like, how could that be?
How can that be? They've got just about everybody registered.
It's impossible.
Just about everybody is registered.
Everybody's registered.
So I've
Wow.
shown this to several political analysts and experts, and when I showed it, they're like, wait a minute. That can't be.
Right.
Most of the time it's 70, 80%. How
Right.
can you?
You
but
can't, right.
county after county, I have seen this.
County after county.
Yes.
Now let me interject right there.
Yeah.
This is Ohio. I want everybody to know that these machines, this stuff went across the country, every state, and they say, well, how can that be? Ohio was like 7-8% that Trump won by it, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
He actually won by 15 or 16%. This
Exactly.
is what we have in the first absolute proof, where we show you the attack on our country and the algorithms we showed there.
Yes.
Now, I want everyone to know, this is completely separate from that. This is what we have over here that we showed you in the first documentary, completely separate. What you have done is validated what we told them in the
Yes.
first absolute proof.
And as a scientist, I love that
Yeah.
because it's a control. This
Yeah,
is the first time
yeah,
I've ever
yeah.
spoken like
that we've ever even spoken
Exactly.
about this. I'm surprised. This is amazing.
Well,
so why would
yes.
why would they register everybody?
Well, because think of it like a credit line.
Right.
The more people you have registered, the more ballots you can put in wherever you need them.
Right.
In fact, speaking of ballots.
Okay, that was the first red flag that they matched.
Exactly.
here.
There's something on it. Everything here, none of this is theoretical. This is all real data.
This is all absolute facts
Yes.
and proof.
And
right.
and the exciting thing to me about it is that anybody can do this.
Right.
You could go right now online, Secretary of State webpage in Ohio, which is why I picked Ohio.
Right.
You can't do it in some states.
Right.
And you can download these data for
Where
yourself.
all the crooked Secretary of States are. You can't do them in those states, right?
That's right.
Brad, we can't do it in Georgia. We get that.
I've done several states already, and there are several states ongoing.
Right.
I've already shown this in Florida,
Right.
Pennsylvania, in
Right.
Colorado,
Right.
and Ohio.
Yeah. And they're all identical.
Everywhere.
Every single state that you've been in
is using the same algorithm.
The same algorithms
Yes.
with the machines.
Yes.
Wow.
The blue curve is the population.
Right.
And that's just downloaded from the census.
Yep.
The black curve are the number of people that are registered.
Right.
That's just downloaded from the downloadable
Right.
database. And the red curve are the number of ballots. Now,
Okay.
here's
Now, are these the ballots of people that voted that they're saying voted?
well stated. It's who they
Say voted.
Yes.
Now I don't have. I can see this right now. I hope everybody notices this. There is no way in mathematical history that the curve would be like that. That the same amount of people, 20 years old, voted proportionate to the population. The same amount of 30-year-olds, same amount of 50-year-olds, same amount of 80-year-olds, same amount of 90-year-olds. Right?
Absolutely.
That's a deviation of all time. It's impossible.
And you ain't seen nothing yet.
Wow.
Just look at the shape. Look at how the details are mirrored.
Right.
I mean, the shape of the registration is mirrored.
It's exactly
in the ballot. In
This
fact,
is.
I'll make it obvious for you.
Wow.
Okay, I'll make it
You
obvious.
got everybody. Look at this.
Yeah.
This is what it didn't matter who you voted for, what you did.
No.
They did it for you. This attack on our country by foreign interference, foreign actors coming in. And with domestic actors too, because it had to be pre-programmed, right?
Yep.
They had to be planned. They had to be online,
Yes.
and then they had to be online afterwards.
Before, during, and after.
Before, during, and after. And
Yeah.
this is 100% proof that this happened.
Yes.
And this is Ohio, but you're finding every place you're checking.
I did all 88 counties in Ohio perfectly. I can predict everyone.
All
I'll show you that in a minute.
88 counties in Ohio.
Yeah, yeah. And you would think, and honestly, when I was working in Pennsylvania, I was bragging about Ohio. Yeah, you guys have all these problems in Pennsylvania.
Right.
And so one of the people there said, well, have you run any other states? And I hadn't even thought about it because I was so busy digging up all the corruption here.
Right.
So I went over to Ohio and I was all ready to be all proud about it. And suddenly,
you're going, what?
What?
Yeah. Well, it's just like Texas. You know, they were all proud they didn't use the Dominion machines. Well, we have 100% proof it was all in Texas with the other machine, the ES&S or Smartmatic, whatever they had. So this is why everyone out there, when I say to you all what we showed in absolute proof in the first one, the actual vote totals were almost 80 million for Donald Trump. And for Biden, it was a little over 66 million. Those are real. How can these numbers flip so much? You see, this is just Ohio. And all 88 counties having that algorithm.
Yes.
And, you know, it was done every single state.
Every state.
And this is what we have over here with the spyware. We've all told you in absolute proof, the first one. Well, we're going to show some of that in this documentary too. But this absolutely validates the attack of the algorithms and this, flipping through. So I can't even believe this.
Well, and this is, and all I did here was just take this black curve and multiply it by one number, 86%.
86%. Yeah. So, what is that telling everybody?
One simple number does that. But what if you wanted it to fit everywhere?
Right.
Why not multiply by 86% here and something else here?
Right.
Well, but anyway, that was red flag number 2. The fact that there's such a good appearance. Right. What if I allowed you to have different percentages for each age?
Right.
Then the 86% works here, but it doesn't work here.
Right.
But what if I have a number for each one?
Right.
Okay, I can do that.
Right.
You need a different
proportion for every age. Right. So they could put that in too.
When you do put in a proportion for every age, then you can predict it much better.
Wow.
Now, I left a little bit of an error here on purpose, and you'll see why in a minute.
Okay.
Because the proportions I'm using are the same ones I use in every county in the entire state.
Oh, wow.
In other words, one set of numbers works
every single county. Now, it could only be done on machines that are online.
Has to be.
Now I'm going to ask you this, because you not knowing what we've had, did you watch Absolute Proof?
Of course.
Okay. The stuff that you've seen at the end with all the attacks from with this spyware.
Are you kidding?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Now those what they use there, that system, okay.
Yes.
Now it's because you don't know how this happened. You just know it couldn't be done by humans.
It could not be done by people.
It could not be done by people.
No.
So what he's validated, it could not be done by people, but we also know who did it, where it came from, where the hacks came from, how they got in, did they break the firewall, were they allowed access, you know? And it's amazing you didn't find one county in Ohio you checked every one.
And there's more to that too. So I was watching Absolute Proof, and the first 3/4 of it or so was just stuff I'd already kind of heard in the news, following what's going on.
Right.
But when you got to the last fourth, I was on the edge of my seat
with all the actual attacks.
And the graphics were great, but I'm a numbers guy. The graphics are cool, but you know what? I was looking at your log, 3,000 pages of logs, and I noticed in the last column, every one of those things is like, take this many ballots away, take that many ballots away, take that many ballots away, and I'm thinking, I know exactly what is going on right there. So I felt like, okay, you're providing all the access, and what does it do once it's in?
Right.
I can tell you what it's doing when it's in.
Right.
So the two married.
They're perfect.
And so the whole time I'm thinking, I got to talk to Mike. I got to talk to Mike. Because I got exactly the other half of the story.
And then everyone realized this, and we had this divine connection between the gal that I had met and the gal that you had met, and that's how you ended up here.
Yes.
And I want to tell you this is. All which we found out since you watched that, you've seen all those IP addresses, those IP.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Now we went across the country and validated, does this computer exist? Does this IP address?
Yes.
So we validated that.
Yes.
I mean, this is since Absolute Proof, and it's and then now to have 100% evidence that it happened everywhere, you know.
Yes.
And they just marry each other. It's perfect.
What
This
I like
is
what
amazing.
you did is you have the log, but then you went on the ground, boots on the ground, and confirmed.
And confirmed it. And that's what we did. And there's what you've seen there, that was just a sampling. We have the whole United States. We have hundreds of thousands, actually millions of pages of cyber footprints of these all attacks. And then we convert them into the actual IP address, the cyber footprint, who attacked, who did it, what time they did it, what computer came out of China to do it, and what county attacked here, what computer went into, the IP of the computer, the ID of the computer. Now, what I'm going to be doing, just so everybody knows, is taking the data from that, and then we're going to take this now and go, wow, they're identical.
Yes.
You know, I mean, this is, in all these states that think that this wasn't, you know, that they weren't, you know, the 5 swing states or 6 swing states, it was everybody. So what that confirmed, like I said, I always wondered, like states like Ohio and Iowa and Florida, which you won by, you know, 5 to 8%, they were double that.
Oh, easy.
They were easily double that. And everyone says, well, why didn't they take those states too? Well, because if they took everything, obviously you'd have an investigation right away. We were just a blessing, a miracle. Then on election night, they underpredicted by about 12 to 14 million votes that President Trump was going to get because of everyone out voting and getting, you know, this great president that he had fulfilled all his promises and everything else. So they didn't expect that. No. And that's what broke those algorithms, and you've seen an absolute proof. Well, they broke it because why? They were running out of railroad track. They were running out of race.
That's why they had to stop it.
That's why they had to stop it in the middle of the night, and everybody knows that story. And by the way, I want to tell one more time. Everyone thought that was mail-in votes, those big spikes. No, that was the mail-in votes came in the day before, in the morning of the 3rd. I know there was a big trick going. Well, what do we do now? What do we do now? That's right. It took Arizona a week to figure some out. Pennsylvania a week. You know, all these things. Michigan, they just went all in. Boom, let's just put in 100 and some thousand votes for Biden. Just pop them in there. You know, but this attack, you know, I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. It doesn't matter. What did you think when you seen this as just a citizen of our country going, it's over, right? Elections are done forever.
Well, I'm a scientist, and so the first thing I had was elation. Woohoo, I solved the problem, eureka.
Yeah.
Then after that, I felt violated.
Yeah.
I felt our country has been violated.
Right. This is coming out now. We have states coming out over like Wisconsin now and New Hampshire, and all these things are coming up where it's just going to validate this massive crime against humanity, crime against the United States, and crime against all people. I don't care what political side you're on. Do you know that there was a movie, Kill Chain, it came out a year ago, and the Democrats, when they're going, we cannot use machines because they have these algorithms, you know,
and they're afraid it's going to use.
They were afraid against them. You know, just because you're a Democrat out there, and this happened to be this time, you think it's on your side. This isn't the Democratic Party that came in. This is communism and socialism that came into our country now, and everybody. This is what I'm saying. What's going on right now. Even my Democrat friends are going, wow, this is not what we voted for.
Right.
This is attack on our First Amendment rights. What do they do when communism and socialism come in? You take away the First Amendment, you take away free speech, suppress that, cancel culture, cancel people out, and then you start just going out there and saying, this is one voice and that's their voice, and it's all control, you know. So this is, it's exciting. I've told before, I said it's exciting what you just said, then you have peace, but there's also an excitement. It would be different.
Yes, I agree.
You know, at least we know that we have all the evidence now.
Yes.
So what is done with that, you know, I said over the next 5 or 6 weeks, we're going to do an evidence dump of the country and the world so they can see everything before we get this to the Supreme Court. Because, by the way, everyone, no one has seen this evidence. No one out there. This wasn't available in November. It wasn't available in December. This is all new. It was, and yours is even brand new right now. This is brand new. This is brand new, and it validates what I found brought to me on January 9th. And from then on, it's been and you're finding it all over the country. This is the miracle that if if everyone would have done their job and with the dead people, and like I said in the first absolutely, and the non-residents that voted, you could take all the swing states, and Donald Trump won them anyway, even with those, I call it organic cheating. Sure. But then we wouldn't be where we're at now to catch these machines. Yeah. And if we didn't do this, if this didn't happen, it's over. Once you say there's never, why even have another election, right?
Oh, no, the whole thing is an illusion.
It's an illusion. If you, I mean, did that scare you? They're going, wow, we're never going to have a fair election again in history.
And what's the first thing that happens with the new administration, HB1?
Yeah.
What does that do?
Yeah.
It basically registers everybody. Right. You're giving them an infinite credit line.
You're done. You're done. It's over.
Yes.
And that's why the whole world is watching. I've had calls from other countries like you wouldn't believe going, we're praying that you guys can, get this exposed, get the truth exposed, because they're next. This all started back in Venezuela when they took that country in a couple of years when Smartmatic started back then. And, these machines have been, it's a tool. Anyone can, win any election. Well, I want to win this one. They asked me, would you run? I said, I wouldn't run for a dog catcher right now because somebody else would pick the winner.
Yeah.
But just so everybody knows, we've have everyone out there. I have all these different groups now on the ground in all these states. And, it just came up. I just seen it yesterday with Wisconsin. They're going to, all these places now, they're going to open up stuff for auditing.
Yes,
Wisconsin, Georgia, New Hampshire, all these deviations. Now they're going to finally open up so we can look at it. And then we're going to have you, I'm going to have you, Dr. Frank, out there, using this algorithms because there's just, now we can validate 3-4 different ways and validate that this was the biggest attack ever, one of the biggest crimes, I think, committed in world history.
Another word for algorithm is model. The cool thing about having a model is you can predict the way things should be.
Right.
Well, if it deviates from there, why?
Yeah, right.
Those are the mistakes.
Yeah, those are the mistakes.
And we've got a lot of those. And I can take you right to the door. I can take you right to the address of the person we need to knock on their door.
Right.
Which is so fun that's what's fun about these algorithms.
You can, it's a validation.
Absolutely, yes.
And I want everyone, when you talk about algorithms too, it's like I've said before, I look at, in my company, I look at every day, all I do is look for the deviations. If one station does 10 times more than it was supposed to, something's wrong.
Yes.
It had to have a different input to get out the output.
Yes.
Now, over here, I might have, let's say a station did 20,000, normally does 2,000. That individual station you can look into, find out, was the commercial different? Did it rain that day? Whatever. Something changed it.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden one day, all my pillow outlets were all the same and the same exact percentage, I'm going, okay, something happened here. And it wouldn't be that they really did that money. It would be something that changed in my computers that had to do that, because you could not, no way could you ever do that humanly to make all of them exactly increase the same percentage.
When I've shown this to other people, they've said, well, gee, how could people do that? And I say,
you couldn't. It has to be machines.
It has to be.
And it rhymes with Dominion. And it rhymes with Smartmatic and ES&S. All these machines that were used out there. And it can be, once again, I just want you to say one more time, cannot be done by humans.
Cannot be done.
And you have to have access before, during, and after.
This is too extensive. It could not be done by humans. It has to be done by computers.
Right.
I'm imagining a room full of computers somewhere that's connected to the internet, preparing, monitoring, controlling, cleaning up the mess afterwards. And you have to have each step, and it could not be humans.
So it was a well thought out plan.
And I don't think it started this year. I think it's been going at least since 2008.
Yeah, right. And you're exactly right too. That's what we have over here.
You have evidence.
Yeah, we have all the evidence where it came from.
As a scientist, it's fun when you come up with conclusions and they match others.
And conclusions.
This is what's happening for me today.
So what do we have here?
Just a particular random precinct in Ohio. And what it is you got age across the bottom, just like before, and number of people of each age. And so you notice this is how many people are registered, the blue curve, and then this is how many ballots there are. So let's say you need to inject a bunch of ballots into the election. You need a few more ballots for Biden, okay? Where do you get them? You come here and you say, oh, we haven't filled this one up yet. So now you just go back to the data rolls, you find out who hasn't voted, and
you also would have to know if now, what I asked you off camera was, everyone should understand this. We all heard stories of people out there that went to the precinct and they said, well, you've already voted. And they go, no, I haven't.
Yes.
Because that means they had already took their vote and used it. They might not have ever voted before, and they didn't expect them to vote, but in this election they did vote,
because
or they
people
wanted to
love-
vote.
people-
So that was it. These things is set up all these deviations. I mean, I'm sure in any other election they're going, you don't get there and say you've already voted. I mean, but everybody, how did they mix it up? They're going, oh, it's because we have mail-in votings and they're just confusing, and we had the China virus and all this stuff going on.
Yes.
So they're all using that to try and disguise. But once these deviations started popping up, someone's got to come up with an excuse, because I mean they did not plan on Donald Trump getting 80 million votes. That's the whole thing right there.
I think you got more than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've actually looked at the spyware that these guys had,
Yes.
and we've come up with right around 80 million.
I'll take
I would
your word
bet
for
when
it.
I would bet when you did this though across the country, by the time you're done doing every state, I'll bet it'd be identical. When they only predicted 67 to 68 million, that's 12 million more votes. And the only way to get that is throughout the whole country, which is exactly what they did.
People ask me, well, gee, Dr. Frank, if Trump won in Ohio and they could have manipulated it, why didn't they make Trump win? And the answer is there just aren't enough bodies left in Ohio to assign. So they still have to manipulate it, though, because they've been doing it for years. And if they suddenly stop, that would stand out. That's one red flag. Another thing is, this is how they do all the down ballot stuff.
Right.
Because
did you hear that, everybody? This is something we're talking about. That down ballot stuff. John James in Michigan, who really won.
How can you have a situation where, for example, in Ohio, where Trump is winning by this massive, yet you lose conservative judges?
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
You come down here and you say, hey, and those are usually smaller races. You only need a few extra 100 ballots to win those.
Right.
So, in this was Butler County. They've got 280 precincts.
Right.
You only need a couple hundred ballots. Can you find two ballots in this one? Yeah.
Yes,
you can
can
find
right.
two in it.
So you can everything. I want everyone to realize that this crime against our nation and humanity and the world. When they go for everything, it wasn't just the top ticket. They worried because once the algorithms broke, now that had to be their number one concern. We got to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't win, even though we're losing a lot of these other ones. A lot of these congressmen got through because they didn't have enough track left to do their cheat.
Exactly.
There wasn't enough people left in all these states to cheat, and especially in places where these congressmen were. Because how did he win? I think it was like, I don't know how many, 15 to 17 of them won.
Yeah.
And you lose the presidential race. It's impossible.
Not likely.
Not absolutely. That's what this is about.
Yeah, exactly.
So if this wouldn't have happened, if we wouldn't have had this great president where these algorithms broke because if everybody got out and voted, if that wouldn't have happened, I mean, it's over. At 3 o'clock in the morning, all the states would have been done, turned in. We'd all went to bed. Better luck next time. And there wouldn't be a next time, because now this was the big takeover in history, starting here in the world, And their big test was Venezuela. They did it 2 years. Boom, and it's done. And you take over the world. You never have, and that's down tickets, that's everything. And you could disguise it. We all know all the corrupt Republicans that popped their head up, Brian Kemp, Brad Raffensperger. I mean, all these Republicans, a lot of Secretary of State, governors like Doug Ducey, these guys popped their heads up, and a lot of senators. And you're showing that they could have just manipulated back and forth whoever they want to win between them. But in reality, it's a new thing coming in, the socialism and communism. And these guys that have what I've learned in politics, when you get a mix, how could this happen to our country with all these bad actors here, though, is how it can happen. Because what I've learned in politics, and I didn't know a thing about them, I was an ex-addict, that they have, it seems like there's three things. They either have a political agenda for their party and not worried about the people, or they have a personal agenda. That's really a big one. Or maybe they're getting compromised, blackmailed, who knows, But it seems to be that. There's very few of them that I've seen. Our president we had, Donald Trump, when we, having him, where the things they're doing are for the people.
Yes.
It's supposed to be for the people. And you have a problem solution, and what does it manifest to help all people? I don't care what party you're in or what people, or what race, whatever, it's for all of us. And that's where this will all be fixed. I really believe that, because this exposed not only the machine, the fraud, the election steal, but it also for a lot of the corruption. About corruption, people that don't, laws that should be changed that don't do their jobs.
Yeah.
The Constitution that wasn't followed anywhere. It was not followed anywhere. And I want everyone to know, well, why didn't this evidence get looked at? Or it did get looked at. No, this is all brand new. This is new right now, today. We're in March. You know, and this just come out now to me. Yes. You know, and all this stuff, they didn't have this back then. So anyone that says, oh, it's all been looked at, the judges looked at, there was a safest looked at. No. Absolutely not true. And all of you out there, I want you to share this. I want you to get it out everywhere. You get this out everywhere, because we're going to keep dumping evidence. We're going to have you back, Dr. Frank, as you do state by state by state.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing. But thanks for coming and being a part of this. This is
pleasure,
exciting.
Sir.
God bless you. Well, everyone, we have great breaking news here. Since we were filming a couple weeks ago this documentary, John has went out, and with all these other questions we had, and he has done a great investigation. And John, what do you have for us right now today?
Yeah, Mike, I was actually watching the November 3rd election, and I was sick to my stomach. I was watching the vote dump at 4 a.m. in the morning. I watched the videos on live television of the vote totals flipping in front of everybody. The mainstream media was so overly quick to call the election in Biden's favor. From there, I decided to see for myself. I kept on turning over stones, and I found multiple pieces of evidence that proved to me that this was actually a well-orchestrated vote theft. A poll manager contacted me on January 3rd, 2021, and basically conveyed to me that they were very uncomfortable with this phone that they had. Now, this phone is a model 40440 flip phone. Now, what was interesting about this particular phone is that it is a 4G Wi-Fi hotspot. After further digging on this device, we bought it, and I was asked to go back and obtain more evidence from poll managers and poll workers. Seeing the device, I was very concerned, and I actually bought a copy myself to try to figure out who exactly manufactured it. The phone manufacturer appears to be AT&T, but it was in fact outsourced to Alcatel. Alcatel was, for the cellular world, is expected to be a European company. But back in 2005, TCL bought the Alcatel name out of a joint venture. TCL is actually the true manufacturer / parent company of Alcatel. The operating system on the phone is KaiOS. It was made in Hong Kong, and TCL is one of the largest shareholders, and Google invested at least $22 million with this. So you may ask, who is TCL? TCL is headquartered in China, founded as a state-owned enterprise. Mike, you might ask yourselves, is TCL trustworthy? Multiple warnings over TCL devices and TCL TVs in government buildings. They've had multiple security scandals, such as their weather forecast app, including major portions of spyware, and multiple backdoors into networks via their devices. From here, I decided that I was going to try to do my best to catch them in the act. I went and collected parts and built a Raspberry Pi Zero W in order to install Kismet, a Linux operating system, to try to capture Wi-Fi in the air. The device that I worked on actually is able to, like a camera, record all Wi-Fi signals in its vicinity. So it records anything that's transmitted over Wi-Fi in its immediate vicinity. Now, what we found with the Raspberry Pi Zeros is we found hidden SSIDs and questionable MAC addresses. So is this important? We found them not in one, but 6 different precincts in 3 different counties in Georgia, Cobb, Gwinnett, and Fulton, on the January 5th runoff. The phones were connected to the internet via the TCL flip phones. Mike, you know the first absolute proof? You know where we had the wide area networks Well, now here's the other half of the LAN, the local area networks at the precinct levels. We found that at the precinct levels, they were connected to the internet, and TCL was one of the IP addresses that we traced back to China during the steal. In fact, Mike, TCL accessed over 150 election servers in 14 different states, including multiple Secretary of State networks, according to my data that I collected and other corroborating sources.
So what you're saying, John, this actually even shows more evidence of a state-owned company right out of China attacking us directly through the secretaries of state, their computers, the machines, using these cell phones that were owned by China as internet devices.
Mike, what we're saying is we have verified connection to the polling pads with China by this TCL flip phone. We also have the absolute proof of interference by the fact that we have transmissions that go back to this Chinese state-owned company, TCL. We have the absolute proof of their incursion, their illegal incursion into 150 election servers in 14 different states, including multiple Secretary of State offices. China chose Biden, not the American people.
So you have China, you have the TCL company, you have the machines, your Dominions, your Smartmatics, you have these, you have cell phones that went onto the internet owned by the Chinese company TCL.
Yes, sir. What I'm saying is we have multiple sources that are recording this at the exact same time, showing matching MAC addresses and matching IP addresses for devices communicating with this TCL company in China.
Well, now we're going to welcome back two guests that were on Absolute Proof, General McInerney and Colonel Phil Waldron. And we all remember during that, the last third of Absolute Proof, that had all of these IP addresses, IDs of computers, who attacked, what country it came from. And we put this out there. It was evidence that had never been seen before and proved an attack on our country, mostly by China. So I want everyone out there to know, none of the mainstream media, none of them, refuted everything. They just went completely silent on us. They didn't say that the evidence was wrong or didn't refute it or anything. But I did hear from people going, well, have you validated these IDs and these IP addresses and stuff? So is there news on that?
Yes, our team started basically doing an independent verification of the IP addresses and looking at focusing on the battleground states and those areas that seem to have the biggest impact. That's the piece that our team, our White Hat hackers, have started working on, at least to confirm the IP addresses and both the U.S. and the foreign IP addresses, for the most part, in areas where the attacks or the interventions were successful. Those have been verified.
You said that you even checked some overseas, huh?
Correct. And the point that you just made on independent multi-party validation is really, really critical. Using different tools, using different suites and software. So that's going to be really critical, that all of that information folds in together, and there's multiple validations for for the foreign interference.
Right, and that's what we're going to show in 5-6 weeks as we dump all the evidence to the public and show the world all the evidence. By the time it gets to the door of the Supreme Court and we put this case there, all 9 of them are going to say, wow. General McInerney, what happened to our country on November 3rd?
Well, we had the most massive cyber warfare attack, Mike, in history on our electoral system. It has never been anything of that magnitude. We have precise examples and evidence for the Supreme Court and any other court in the whole world. It is very precise, and it shows the magnitude led by the Chinese Communist Party as a foreign entity.
And these machines now allowing for this foreign interference. We went all the way back to Venezuela when the machines first came in, and it took only 2 years for them to completely take Venezuela. I think it's all getting shown to everyone that what communism and socialism is like now with their cancel culture, taking away our free speech and all this, and taking away our freedoms. What an easier way to do it, like you said, with introducing a virus, a pandemic that's going to keep everybody, take our freedoms away, and once again put fear into everybody. They have a world agenda, don't they?
Absolutely. It's a global agenda. They demonstrated what they did to the global economy, and then specifically the leader in national security in the world was the United States, and look who they put in.
Right.
And as you said, socialism is the front door to communism.
Right.
And Venezuela's seen it. They're using the same model,
Right.
Mike, and it's your leadership that has enabled us to put absolute proof together and get Brannon Howse and Mary Fanning and all these people, Colonel Phil, to show the American people what has happened to them, and they've got to take their country back.
What we're going to do is we got this new social media platform, because obviously they've been taking all the influence in the country off there, suppressing their speech. But this new platform called Frank is everyone's gonna come on there, all the influencers, and they're gonna be able to talk about Dominion and Smartmatic and communism coming into our country, and talk about the vaccine.
Something that General McInerney said was very, very important that the viewers can go look up. This is the Chinese doctrine of unrestricted warfare, and this goes back to the writings of Sun Tzu and Mao Zedong in the Communist Revolution. So these doctrines are there. They're there for people to look at. They can go probably to Barnes and Noble and buy Mao's On Guerrilla Warfare, which is a very good primer on what happened to the China as the Communist Revolution took place. This is cyber warfare. This is the Chinese doctrine of unrestricted warfare. And it goes all the way back to the writings of Sun Tzu. The acme or the pinnacle of war is to win without fighting. And they've done that. They've won their island building campaign. They won't have to fire a shot. They probably won Taiwan. They'll be unrestricted operating through the Panama Canal Zone down through Central and South America, the Caribbean, Africa, Afghanistan, the Ring Road project. They plan in hundreds of years in strategy. One other thing that you mentioned, the news and the FBI and all these other folks said that, well, we never saw anything. It's because they weren't looking. They didn't know where to look. Just like General McInerney said, this was an unprecedented cyber warfare attack. You have to understand that our intelligence community works on national intelligence priorities, and they work generally on band 1 and 2. In the counterterrorism, we've got targets, priority targets that we look at, and those lower levels don't get looked at.
That's so bizarre, because we talked about in this documentary, we talked about a movie, Kill Chain, that was last year. And even the Democrats in that, my own senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, talked about if these machines are used, we are vulnerable for an attack by a foreign country to interfere with our election. And so with all that, I mean, they made a movie about it. How come our intelligence teams would not at least be looking for that? Isn't that strange?
Let me interject there. You're being very kind to them. There is no way that our Cyber Command and NSA could have ever missed the amount of cyber warfare that went on in the early hours of 4 November. There's no way they could miss it. Now, I think we have a cancer there. That part of the military and that part of the intelligence community, like the FBI missing it, DHS missing it, there is no way that they could miss it. And that's extremely important, I think, Mike,
right,
for why absolute proof is such a paramount, of paramount importance to the nation, that this information get out to the American people.
Right. Well, and we're going to put all the information out there, and we're going to just pour it out there. And we're going to keep doing these all the way up to the Supreme Court. I want to do it where even if I don't care if you're a Democrat, Republican, who you are, by the time this gets to the Supreme Court, even those 9 will have watched this and watched over and over again and seen all the evidence going, wow, this is the biggest cyber attack, like the general says, in history. And then, General, I don't know what they do from there, but obviously you can never have machines ever again. I want to thank both of you again. And is there anything else either you would want to add before we go?
I'd just like to say, Mike, that this nation has never been here before. And every American, as you're pointing out, this is their Normandy battlefield. This is their Iwo Jima. This is the Mount Suribachi. We've never been here before, but you are presenting the evidence to show that this election was stolen with the aid of a foreign power that is bent on global domination.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Mike, the American people are waking up. I know we had a conference call earlier this week with the Secretary of State of New Hampshire. Brilliant gentleman, knows more about election history and election law than anyone that we've come in contact with since last August. The folks in Florida and Washington, and Georgia, Louisiana, people are becoming involved, and they're finally waking up and understanding what happened and trying to do their best to prevent it from happening again.
Oh, that's awesome. And that gives everybody out there great hope. Thanks, Colonel. Thank you, General. And God bless you both. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in the next report.
Thank you, Mike.
God bless you, Mike.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, one of the things that I think for the American people is this awakening, but paying attention to the local things that are happening in your communities. You have to do this. I mean, you cannot, and the way I would say it is like a gentleman talked to me the other day in the state of Florida at this one particular event. He says, I watched what happened, and now I'm getting off my couch and I'm going to get involved in my community because I can't have this happen with my children and my grandchildren going forward in this country. If there's one thing that I sit here and why I'm sitting here with Mike Lindell today, one, because we met and we found a common effort that we wanted to get behind, which is this fighting against this incredibly corrupt election system and process that we have with this machinery. We have to stop this. We have to get to another place, and we have to bring our communities together in a much greater way to be able to basically coordinate and to keep an eye on the kinds of things that we need to do for our election system. So get involved, get out there at the local level. Our Constitution gives us those individual rights and individual liberties. I don't care about the cancel culture. I don't care about the censorship. The American people are going to work through this. We're going to fight through this, and we're going to overcome this problem because we now know what happened in our election. And folks, more and more information is going to come out in the future, and I'm talking about in the very near future, as Mike talks about with dumping all this information out there. Pay attention to it, get smart about it, and use it in your own arguments, in your own debates, in your communities to be able to say, never again will we allow this to happen, and we should not.
And I've been getting emails from all over the country. People have already started that in their communities. One of the common things is they're going approaching their county election boards and stuff and going, do we have machines? They're going, yeah. And they're going, when did we get them? 2019, 2020. I mean, right. They're all just like they came in like this big invasion, right. And they're going, why do we have them? We don't want them. So you get down to that level because we had Dr. Frank on earlier, and down to the little, even school board elections.
That's right.
All these things, they can do anything with that. This isn't just talking about a presidential election. All the down tickets and stuff, all these down tickets right down to your own community. You got a machine going. Somebody could just, you have micro things down there all the way up to the macro, the presidential election, and you take everything in between. This isn't about just one election. This is about everything. It's about everything we have.
I mean, when you think about it, and Mike talked about, rocks and glass and bottles or whatever, broken things inside of his pillows. Somebody would go, hey, this is a bad pillow. He'd open it up and look at it and go, yeah, you're right. We'll fix it.
Right.
I mean, Every mom that goes to every store picks up, the milk carton or the cereal box or, the thing of butter, and they look at the ingredients inside. And we don't, these companies, these machine-owning companies, they don't want to list the ingredients inside because they don't want us to know what's inside of these machines. So it's just like buying a piece of food at the supermarket. For every mother out there, that, what we want is, I want as an American citizen, I want to know what's inside of that thing that is going to elect the next president of the United States or the next member of the school board that's going to make policy for the education of my children. I want to know the ingredients in every single box that I'm about to use to make a massive decision about my country or about my community.
Wow,
and it's that simple.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. I mean, and we ask ourselves across our country and across the world, why, if there's nothing to hide, why can't you see what's inside the box?
Just let us see it. Just let us see it. That's it. I mean, the Dominion, Hart, ES&S, I don't care what the name is. If we're using these electronic machines to vote for president or dog catcher, I want to make sure that when I vote, when I slip that piece of paper in, or however it is that I do it at my local office, my local precinct, I want to make sure that it counts. So back to, as I look at the audience, I really hope that Senator Amy Klobuchar, Senator Dick Blumenthal watch this show, because if they do, what they need to reflect on is what they said during the documentary Kill Chain, which they said the machines are bad. We have to be careful of the machines. I mean, go back and look at what you said, Klobuchar, Senator Klobuchar, and Senator Blumenthal, and others who were on that show, about the way the machines are manipulated, the way that they're used against, in their case, their party, right? So now all of a sudden we had the tables turned, and it's nothing to see here, folks. Don't worry about it. These people are conspiracy theorists. They're lying to you. They're sore losers. No. If this thing was a free and fair election and as transparent as it's supposed to be, we wouldn't be sitting here today talking to the American people about this. This election was manipulated both internally and by foreign interference. The foreign interference is real. I mean, if you just believe what the intelligence community just reported, which is very hard to believe these days, but they just reported that foreign interference did occur in our election. So, okay, let's see how it occurred, because we do not want to have this happen again. I don't want it happening at the state level for election of a governor or election of a county board of supervisors, and I certainly don't want it happen again at the presidential level. I mean, we just can't not allow this type of activity to occur with machines that we know they're connected to the internet when they're not supposed to be. We have IP addresses, internet protocol addresses, that are electronic highways going back into these countries, and we can see the activity. We can actually see the electronic activity. And believe me, folks, if you're paying attention and you watch some of the data that Mike Lindell is talking about putting out there, take a look at it. I mean, this is not made up stuff. This is real stuff, and it proves that we had foreign interference in our election.
And now, we even went one step further. We went and we checked the IP addresses and the IDs of the computers. And guess what? They're a perfect match. Identical. It's just, it's amazing. But and we're going to keep making these documentaries. We're going to keep pouring evidence out. General Flynn, I can't thank you enough for what you've done for our country, and for, you look up patriot in the dictionary. Remember what dictionaries were out there? But there you are. There's a picture of you.
Thank you, Michael.
And we owe.
This is an important.
This is the most important thing
really is.
In our lifetimes.
If there's anything I've done in my life to, in service to this country, in uniform overseas, and I love our military, I love our veterans community, I would just tell you that if I fought for anything, as I've reflected back on what happened on the 3rd of November and what I know to be true, this is probably the most important endeavor in my life, and it's really not for me, it's not for Donald J. Trump. It's really for my children and especially my grandchildren going forward, because I want this country to continue to be a country of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, a constitutional republic. It is an experiment in democracy, but that's okay, and we have to continue to protect our individual liberties and our individual rights to breathe the fresh air of liberty. We need to have a free and fair election process. And right now, the American people across the board, I don't care what party persuasion you have or you're a part of, nobody trusts our election system right now. No one.
Well, thanks for coming, General. So now the moment we've all been waiting for. When we came out with absolute proof on February 5th, up to that point, the mainstream media, they called me all day long, every day, and badmouthed me and said, you know, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. I said, you wait till February 5th. February 5th came out, 9 a.m., we launched absolute proof, by the way, seen by 150 million people. And the mainstream media, everybody went silent, everyone. Social media took it down, they just blocked it everywhere. No one said, nobody discredited it. But I would say, you know, you had a few people out there that said, well, Mike, you should validate that. And you know what? I said, you know, that's a real good idea. Let's validate this 100% proof of evidence of this cyber attack by China on the U.S. and these vote flips. So on February 21st, I went out and retained one of the best cybersecurity and digital forensic experts ever. And we have him blacked out for a very good reason. He's going to be one of the experts, witnesses of many we have once we get this to the Supreme Court. So everybody, you're going to now hear about his amazing credentials.
So I've been, you know, in cybersecurity and advanced threats for the better part of 15 years. IT, you know, longer than that. Been around computers a long time.
Right. So you've been working with government and the private sector.
Yeah.
Okay.
Both, you know, companies, personal, and government.
Right, and with this is what we have here on the screen. This is the certificates that we have. This is the highest standard in cybersecurity that there is. Correct?
Yeah, in terms of certifications.
Right. Can you show? I want everyone to really see these qualifications that are amazing. Okay. So if we go here, so which part of these were you specialize in?
Probably the first 4. Okay. Cyber defense, offensive operations, DFIR, which is digital forensic and incident response, and cloud security.
Okay. If we go to the next page here, I want everybody to see this. This is protect and defend. When you talk about government, right? This is your wheelhouse right here. Cyber defense analysis, everybody. Is this correct?
Cyber security defense, infrastructure support, incident response, vulnerability assessment and management, and essentially that kind of goes both ways in this chart. So analyze the threat analysis, exploitation analysis, all source analysis, targets, and language analysis.
Right. So what I had you look into was directly in your wheelhouse, correct?
Correct.
So I wanted you all to see these amazing credentials. And now what I had him look at was starting with the raw data all the way to the end, basically do what he does for the government and for the private sector, being one of the best there is. So can you take us from the raw data? And by the way, you're going to see something you didn't see in absolute proof right now. This is the computer. Why don't you explain what this is here?
I mean, really, it's just the encrypted data. So you have to take it from this form in hex and convert it into, you know, human readable.
Right. Now this is just one piece. There's a lot, right?
Yeah. This is there's millions of rows.
Millions of rows just for the election.
Just for the election.
Just for the election. Everyone hear that. So this is what you start with. Now, could this be? I want everyone to be clear on this. Could this be taken from any other? Could anyone duplicate these millions of rows or whatever? That was the first thing you had to validate, right?
Because so each segment has its own unique signature, and so that's what we look for. And you know, starting there, you preserve the original copy to maintain the chain of custody of that so that it's admissible. And so I work off a copy. Just like any other guy, we use a write block, so nothing ever touches the source data.
Right. So to explain that to everyone out there, this is when you've seen this for the first time. When you've seen this, right away you knew you were looking at something that was real, and you've seen it before, this kind of data, but you knew there was a lot of it.
Yeah. So when I first looked, there's more to this, this
picture or image, you know, there's more rows there, but essentially the position of this shot was, you know, millions and millions and millions of rows in. So I knew I was dealing with a lot of data.
Like, and that would be like a big computer?
A big computer.
A mega computer.
Yeah. Okay.
So what he's saying is this what we pulled here, this little picture is there's millions of rows just from the election, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, I want everybody to know that. So then what did you do when you started, you know, doing your job as a cyber expert forensic? By the way, I want to ask one more thing. So what you're saying is these can't be going in and be changed, correct? They're like a imprint that...
Yeah, so they're, you know, there's signatures, and, you know, you can look at the actual, you know, the drive of that data, look at the metadata, you can see when it was created, when it was, you know, changed, essentially.
Right.
And so that would be, you know, the period just before the election and, you know, days after.
Right. But nobody could go back in and change any of that. It's a cyber footprint that's locked in time, is that correct?
So it's 100% locked in time because you're capturing a packet as it is being transferred, right? So you can't go back and
change it. You can't recreate it.
There's a timestamp, there's a signature, there's, you know, a lot of different identifying, you know, identifiers within that are just, you know, impossible to kind of recreate.
So in your expert opinion, 100%, this could not be changed in any way, shape, or form?
No, and, you know, the data that I worked off of is a copy, so, you know, that source data will never be altered in any way. It will be preserved in its natural state.
Right. What he means by that, preserved, so when this does get to the Supreme Court, it's locked in 100%, what do you call it, the chain of custody, and nothing. It's, and now, with what you're about to show us, what this would be 100% evidence that this happened on election night, this China attack and these flips.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive. It's wild. You know, I've been doing this a long time, and I have not quite encountered something this
of this magnitude.
This magnitude,
right?
Not just as it relates to everybody, but just the amount of data that you need to unencrypt to, you know, process.
So with that raw data, now I'm going to show you when we've seen in absolute proof, all those lines going back and forth, each one of them was an individual attack. And now we're going to show you again, so if you didn't watch absolute proof, go ahead and show us what we have here. What do we have on the screen?
So right here, when you see green, that is a successful intrusion, meaning they flip votes.
Right.
Red is unsuccessful in terms of flipping votes, but it could be reconnaissance or, you know, passive recon, just looking at the different machines to see what the totals are.
So the green, to say that again, the green attacks here, as we're watching, those were actually attacks that flipped votes.
Correct.
From Trump to Biden, correct?
From Trump to Biden.
Right. And the red lines are all, they're like checking on it.
Yeah.
Okay, does everyone get that? They're checking to see what the tallies are, and then the green ones are actually, when it goes over this computer and says, hey, I'm going to flip some, because it's keeping it this certain percentage, correct?
So the red doesn't necessarily mean, well, it's unsuccessful in terms of flipping votes, but it serves a purpose because it identifies which votes to flip.
Right. So it comes back, gives an identifier, then it'll send a green one over that gets through, flip the votes. And it's keeping these, is in your expertise, is keeping this so that the person that's set to win the election by a certain percentage. Yeah. That's all it's doing, is keeping that. Now, before we get any further, now I had talked to you before we got on here, it happened in every state, correct?
Yeah.
And even Alaska and Hawaii, right?
As you can see there, that pretty much...
Yeah, look at this, okay.
The entire United States.
Okay, entire United States. But what I had him do, I said, I want you to show us just like 19 attacks just on 5 states: Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Georgia. Okay, and what did we find here?
So,
oh, and by the way, now what you're going to see, each one of these is an attack, and you have a graph here that's going to show us what that means, right?
Yeah.
So when you've seen all those lines, everybody, that's each one's an individual attack, and when you take that kind of, I call it that gibberish that came off of the machine, that there's millions of those lines that we can't read, and they're converted. Each one of these is a converted attack that we're going to read across. This is what you've seen in the first absolute proof that Mary read, and each one that went across, but now you've expanded on that. What I've had him do here is validate every single thing from IP address to IDs, and he's going to explain each one as we go across what happened.
Yeah, so each line will essentially represent one of the lines in the map.
Yep.
Right? So if you go horizontally across, that's one line in the map. We have 19 here.
Yeah, there's 19 of them here. 19 attacks, and they all came from China.
Yep.
All came from China. Now I want to show over here. We go line by line. Let's talk about the date and the timestamp. Okay. And by the way, I asked him before we started. Obviously, they're not going by 3rd, 4th, 5th because they're on what? You were saying something to me.
Yeah, so so when you're looking at this, it's UTC time, which is a universal time, and it's military would be Zulu time. And so essentially you have that UTC, you back it up to, each state.
Right, I got you.
Okay. It'll be ahead, 6 hours from the East Coast,
right,
going back towards the west.
Right on, right. So the source, as we go through, what is the source?
Source is the source IP of the attack. So the bad guy.
The bad guy. Now this IP, this is and then you have the latitude and longitude. So this is the source. So this should be in China, correct?
Correct.
And you validated every longitude, latitude, and basically the building where the attack came from, correct?
There's a couple more that are outside of China, but controlled
by China.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you tell us here, so this would be the source, the IP address that you validated, correct?
Yep. So,
the longitude, latitude, the building where it's at.
Correct.
And then here's the province, city, country, I think everybody gets that, China, where it came from.
So the source was in your original film, right? So where it says Beijing, Baidu, Netcom, Science and Technology. So what that is the actual network is Beijing, Baidu, Netcom, Science.
That's right here.
Yeah. Right. So I grabbed what that network actual registration is, and so there's the full written network, which is Beijing, Baidu, Netcom, Science and Technology Co. Limited.
So what does this mean? It came right out of here from that building, that IP address, and I mean.
So the raw data, is being converted from Chinese too.
Oh, you had to convert it from Chinese into that.
So the output for, the original source data, is coming in here, right?
Right.
And so I looked and grabbed, that actual name in English to, go side by side with what was the output to validate it.
Right, wow. Okay, then you get over here. What's this? What network name? What does that mean? A network registration?
So when you're going through, there are ghost IPs or, essentially phantom IPs that are out there, no longer in use or, being used as adversarially as bot networks or, just different things. I wanted to validate, is it current, is it registered, is it in use? And
so you went above and beyond the Call of Duty here on this one.
Yeah, because, this This is a lot of information, but you know, you want to make sure it's right.
And everyone, it took a long time to get these 19, correct? And so now, what is this network name? How is this different from the network? And they have the network name and the network registration, the network code. What does all those three of those mean? We're still on the attacker, correct?
We're still on the attacker, so you know, it's different fields in the registration.
Cyber guys know this stuff.
Yeah, it's. I mean, if you register your network, you know, that network name could be a DBA.
Okay, I got you.
Gotcha. Okay.
Okay, so now as we move on, now this is all the attacker, correct?
Yep.
From here, this is the attacker. And what was the commonality in everyone was China, correct?
It was.
China, every single one. These just these 19 attacks of by the way, I think you told me before we had 2,995 counties were attacked?
Yeah, that is essentially the attack surface is what we would call it. And so
in all 50 states. Okay. So this is just a sample we have here of 19 of the 2,995 counties that were attacked, but just 19 of the flips, correct? Okay. So now this is the target here. So what does that mean? This is the IP address of the
target machine, you know, where it is, latitude, longitude, you know, state, entry point would be the owner, and what the network registration is here in the U.S., network code. In some cases, almost all, as we'll get into, they're registered to that county. So most of the intrusions look like they're at the county level.
Right.
But
Now, I want to ask you this. So the only way any of this could happen is if the machines were online, correct?
Yeah, you wouldn't see this otherwise.
Right. So what we have here then, the target is the attacking with the IP of the actual computer.
Yeah, so
or the machine.
Just right there, you wouldn't have an IP if it wasn't
online.
Yeah, if it wasn't connected to the internet.
Right. Then you have the longitude, latitude. That would be the actual building it happened at.
Yep.
The state, Michigan. Yeah. Entry point owner, Delta County. So that's just at the county level. Mm-hmm. The network registration. So you have the actual. Now, would these guys be guilty of anything, or that's just the registration?
No, but you know, when you look at that registration and the domain, it goes back to Delta County. So, you know, they might say, oh, that's Merit Network. It's actually the domain is registered as Delta County.
Okay. I got you. And then the network code, what would that mean?
That's essentially just the codified.
Intrusion. Now this is if they either, tell us what intrusion means here.
So it could have used credentials implanted in the firewall if there was one present, or essentially both.
Right.
The star is just carrying over from the one above it.
Oh, I get it. Okay. Now this just means they got in and flipped votes, correct? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Now here what we want to show. This is really important. I want to show everyone. So Trump down 3,215. You go all the way down here. This one here, it goes all the way through these. Trump down 24,311. Now, and those are time-stamped. You can't change them. Cyber flips that you have validated 100%.
Yeah, it is captured in the data, and you know there's you're collecting information and preserving it in its state at the time.
So what we have here, you can see here, Trump down 3215, all the way down, all these lists here. This is votes that were flipped from Trump to Biden, correct?
Correct.
And then all the way, like here, 24,311 votes flipped, and that was in Michigan. Okay, remember Michigan had that big spike and all these things too. Well, so all of these you have validated. They're like time-stamped in the computer. Is that correct?
Yeah. So in that file, you know, you can look at that data and see if there's been any, you know, anybody's messed with it, any sort of anything done to it, and it's essentially as it was.
So you're 100% that these are, everything on here is 100% accurate, correct?
As the data was collected. So,
right.
We were seeing votes go down, during the election, which was weird.
Right.
Just for me, I pick up on stuff like that.
Right.
Wait, if you're adding, it's a building block, it should never go backwards. So, looking at this,
it makes sense to you now.
It really makes sense because it's not just Trump going down, it's Biden going up. So those numbers are actually double.
They're actually double. Let's go to that. Let's look what happened. So now, with just these 19 attacks, everybody, just 19 in those 5 states, let's see what happened. So, 518,617 votes were switched from Trump to Biden in just those 19 intrusions. Okay? And now you have here, explain what's going on here?
So this matches up to the number above, the 518, 617, and it's just broken out
by state. Okay, by state. So now these were all flips, so they actually are double then.
They're double.
And then what does that do?
So if Trump goes down, Biden goes up. Essentially, it has to balance.
So does everyone understand that? This flip here, that you're taking 47 away and adding 47 to the other guy. So let's go to the next video here. So everyone, I can do this part. This is exciting. Okay, so out of those 19 flips that came from China over to these 5 states, just 19 of literally
thousands.
Okay, here's what it did. Here's Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Here's what they told us that Biden won by, each state. Now remember, with those 19 attacks you just seen, the absolute interference of our election by China. Here is the switches, and here's what Donald Trump actually won each one of those states by, just with 19 of the flips. And actually, these numbers are going to be a lot more. I just wanted to show you one little attack. So now we have absolute proof of absolute interference by China to switch our election, and we have proven it with one of the government's own cyber experts, one of the best in his field, certified, validated every single thing that we've had in absolute proof. And we showed Democrats earlier in this film that said, you know what, these machines cannot be used because a foreign country can attack us and flip our election. They said this. But now you got to see this. Just the other day, like a week or so ago, Adam Schiff and Chris Krebs said this.
Willie Geist, good to see you this morning. Can you be more specific on China? I think people understand that China broadly is a threat, and I know this is what you'll be picking through at the hearing today. But if you're an American sitting watching this show right now, what is the most immediate threat that China poses?
Well, probably what would strike people most in their living room right now is that China has one of the most capable cyber hacking and cyber espionage capabilities. So China may be in the process of stealing your private data. They may have already stolen your private data. If you're a business owner or business leader, they may have stolen your corporate trade secrets. They may be hacking into government agencies to steal defense plans. So this is, how China's actions influence people's lives every day. It's affecting our economic competitiveness. They don't need to do the same kind of research and development we do if they can simply steal it from our innovators.
Chris, you look down the barrel of these threats in your job inside the government. How did you assess them at the time, and how different do you suspect they are right now in terms of China?
So I think the best characterization of the Chinese threat was posed by Rob Joyce, who's now the National Security Agency's Cybersecurity Directorate leader. And this was at a conference a couple years ago out in San Francisco. And he said, Russia is like a hurricane. China is like climate change. So Russia is much more disruptive in the current moment. But China is much more subtle, much more patient. It's almost a rope-a-dope. They kind of lull you to sleep. You don't see it. They use their soft power very effectively. And even at the local level, they influence politics, not just here in the halls of Washington, which they do, but also in our local communities. So they're much more deliberate, and they have a longer-term strategy as opposed to the Russians who are trying to make an impact today.
So, Chris, what does that mean when you say that China influences on a local level? So if I'm sitting in my town somewhere in America, China is putting its thumb on the scale somehow. What do you mean by that?
Absolutely. So they influence local races. If you think about some of the Confucius Institutes that have been established across our country at colleges and universities, it's an attempt to influence and say, hey, you know what? Hong Kong is part of China long term. It's not, and same goes for Taiwan. The Uyghur issue, not a big deal. This is us, demonstrating our own sovereignty. So they just try to shape the narrative locally to their benefit.
So we can all agree, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, doesn't matter, that China attacked our country with their cyber technology, and we are in the middle of the biggest national security threat ever. So now we've all seen more evidence in absolute proof ×2. And in just 6 weeks since we launched Absolute Proof, look what has happened to our country. You have our First Amendment rights of free speech just attacked. Cancel culture running rampant. You have news stations afraid to tell the news because they're afraid of getting sued. I have friends of mine have lost their podcasts. The free speech has just been absolutely taken away from us. Well, I'm going to tell you all now what's coming. What we're going to do, we worked for years on a new social media called Frank. It's launching in 10 to 14 days. By the time you see this, it should already be launched, hopefully. But it's going to be launched, and what it is, it's like a YouTube and a Twitter combined. And this is going to be, it's going to be the most safe, secure place that will be able to take millions and millions of people of voices, and you're going to be able to speak out and talk about the election fraud. You're going to be able to say the word Dominion. You're going to be able to say the word Smartmatic. You're going to be able to talk about the vaccine, or talk about the borders, or talk about what's happening to our country. And what we all need to do, what all you need to do right now is spread the word. Take this documentary and get it out far and wide. Tell everyone about it and get it. You've all seen Absolute Proof. Tell them they need to see Absolute Proof ×2. And what we're going to do for the next 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, we're just going to dump evidence. What you've seen here tonight is just a small portion of what we have. Every day we're going to just pour the evidence out for everyone in the world to see. Everyone, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, by the time we get to the Supreme Court, which will be 4 to 6 weeks from now, when that gets there, all 9 of them are going to go, they're already going to know, the case will have already been over, going, everyone, even if you're a Democrat, Republican, this was an attack. They're all going to know this was an attack on everybody. This was an attack by the Communist Party coming into our country, foreign entities, starting with China, that stole our election, attacked through these machines, and everyone's already going to know that. And when this gets to the Supreme Court, they're going to welcome it with open arms and go, wow, 9-0, this was an attack, and then what are we going to do about it? And this is going to be, I really believe, that when we get through this, if everybody plays their part and just spreads the word, spreads the evidence, show everybody what really happened, educate everybody on what's going on. We have shown, right now people are seeing that socialism isn't just having a cup of coffee and socializing. We've all seen that now. We've seen what can happen in just 14 months to a country, to the United States. What happened from January and February of 2020 until now. We have been flipped upside down, a thing we've never felt before. Our freedoms are being taken away. But when when this all manifests out and we get through this, I do believe that we will be, once again, it'll be the greatest uniting ever of a country, and it'll end up being the greatest revival in history. President Ronald Reagan famously said, if we lose freedom here, there is no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. And President Reagan was absolutely right. Please share this information with everyone you know. God bless you, and God bless America.